We welcome you into the European Open Division Grand Finals. Labasco and Kenobi here with you. We've got an incredible matchup for you. It's going to be Indignation versus Oblivion. Kenobi, these are two teams that have met twice previously before this, once in the playoffs and then in the regular season. They've had some pretty close matchups, and now we get to see them here at the end of it all.
Yeah, and it's actually Indignation who has had the upper hand in a lot of these matchups so far. Both of those maps they've played, they've won out. We actually saw them play yesterday in the bracket, and it was Indignation who came out with a 3-1 victory. Pretty convincing on most of the maps that they played, and you got to be asking for Oblivion, is this the time? Third time has to be the charm here, or you're going to go 3-0 against this team, and they're going to be the ones who are taking all the spoils of victory, winning this EU practice Open Division season.
So we'll see how it goes. Indignation does come into this game with a 1-0 lead into it. It is a 1st-to-4, though. So that's the one difference we have when we get to the championship game. You go to 1st-to-4, you don't go 1st-to-3. So we have a lot more maps potentially that can be played. Indignation obviously gets that early lead, but we still start with a control point map, and we're going to be going to the map that we've seen probably the most throughout this Open Division as far as controls go, and that's Busan.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this matchup between these two teams is the last time they played in the winners semifinals, Indignation won on control pretty handedly. Labasco, I would say. It didn't seem close at all, and it looked like they probably, at that point with the momentum they had and how well they were playing on control, it looked like they could have swept Oblivion. Oblivion they played a really well played Anubis, and they were able to take that one map victory away, but this is a different little bit of a situation here because you're at a point where if you lose this map, like you mentioned, you're not down 1-0, you're down 2-0. And that's still a pretty hefty mountain to climb for a team being down 2-0 like that. So it is going to offer a lot of momentum either for Oblivion. It's kind of feeling like this might be a must-win type of situation for them.
It almost feels that way, but again, it's still 1st-to-4, so you still have to win 2 more maps if you're Indignation to win yourself the title. So yeah. Even though you are up 1-0 already, you can't rest on your laurels at all. Obviously, we're going into our first map that we're going to have here, which is Busan, and it's going to be downtown where we go, Kenobi, for this first one. You have the potential affair. There's a couple of different options here for both of these teams.
Widowmaker also a possibility specifically on downtown because you have that high ground potential and you can play around those Widowmaker sightlines. But going back to talking about the fact that Indignation is going to have a 1-0 lead here, I would like to see actually Oblivion play as if they don't have that disadvantage, right? Play like this is just a normal set. You still need to win the same amount of games if you're them, and you still need to lose the same amount of games if you're them as well, as if it's a 5-game set. So really just play without the nameplates and just decide everything's fresh. Forget about the last 2 matches that you've already played against this team and just make it a clean slate completely.
Yeah, you can't get overconfident if you're Indignation. Even though you've been in this position, you have a very warm team in Oblivion who just had to play. So they are pretty, they're pretty warm coming into this game. And as far as the comps, not too much of a surprise from the last time we saw these teams play. It's going to be Reaper Doomfist versus Reaper Doomfist.
Yeah, both of these teams have kind of moved towards that type of composition more so than not. The difference is that Oblivion has sometimes picked straight towards that Mei instead of the Doomfist here, but Beppis seems to play actually a pretty good Doomfist in his own right, but so does Tap, and that's what I'm going to be looking out for, Labasco, this Doomfist battle between these two great DPS players.
Well, Beppis getting chunked a little bit at the beginning, putting him a little bit behind before he can go in. Now has his opportunity to do so. Uppercuts Alex into the air. Nothing yet from both of these teams, though. They're just kind of feeling each other out on this high ground.
Yeah, a little bit of a scrappy fight here at the start. No kills just yet. Some halts coming out, but nothing comboed with yet. And Doge goes down. This is the opening that Indignation needs.
And they're going to follow it up, too, taking down these last few players, uppercutting through and getting that rocket punch was Tap. They take care, finally, of Renee, and now they have the flip. You actually get a little bit of a percentage over to Oblivion.
Yeah, but it's only 8%, and it won't matter that much, Labasco. And one of the things I've noticed a little bit from watching Oblivion in their previous matches is they need to keep Doge alive a little bit longer. There are times where he's just dying first. And, in this composition, Labasco, when you lose that Orisa, you lose that basically main tank Bastion in your front line. You don't have the static shield as well, and you lose a lot of what this composition's about.
Well, you have the Coalescence here to keep everybody alive. That should help you keep Doge up in the fight, who is getting aggressive with everybody in the front. Fi is able to get Shade down, so you've lost that main tank for Indignation, and their Coalescence didn't get as much value. You still have your Doomfist alive, though, is the good thing. Gravitic Flux pulling players into the air. Bepis is down, and now you have Alex turning things around for Indignation.
Yeah, and they still are on the point here, so that means they're continuing to tick. Tap gets the kill onto Doge, and this might be Indignation winning the fight from behind, and that's something that Indignation has been so good at, Labasco, throughout this entire tournament so far, is playing from that disadvantaged spot. They lost the Orisa, but they knew they had the advantage with that Gravitic Flux. They use it knowing that SFX can't be towards that sound barrier yet, so they're going to have the damage that they need to win that fight. Now they're going to continue to tick towards that 65%. One or two more fights left for Oblivion.
SFX now with that ultimate up now. See how he tries to utilize it, knowing that that Gravitic Flux is out. They're going to go with the Coalescence, which has been built up again. Sound barrier coming out from A&J, so you can now use that. If you're Renee, you can use your Gravitic Flux afterwards. They use that supercharger and don't get much value. Moving on to the high ground now, and now we'll throw out that Gravitic Flux, and it gets nobody. Use of the Wraith form, make sure that doesn't happen, so no value from ultimates for Oblivion. And now they're going to just throw in that Death Blossom and not get anything.
Yeah, the Reaper Sound Death Blossom is there. It does get something, but again, they are going to be able to flip this point. Labasco, Indignation gets it to 99%, but some ultimates going to waste for Oblivion. If that Gravitic Flux hits, there's no way that they have to use something. They don't have to use their entire ultimate bank, but there they have to. And now it's going to be Indignation who are in the lead here. Alex is about to have this Gravitic Flux, and there's no sound barrier to match it on the other side.
Yeah, I should have said it with Psychas, who didn't get the value for Indignation. Fies definitely did, but again, like you said, no ultimates up here into this next fight for either team. Rocket punching in, not finding anything. There is Bepis able to be kept alive, but now the Gravitic Flux coming out. Coalescence to try and keep players up through it, but it's not going to work. Tap and A&J combining for the first two eliminations, and now they can force their way onto the point. Fi does manage to take down Psycha, but it's a little bit too little too late, it seems. Indignation going to flip this right back over, and here goes overtime.
Yeah, Oblivion is going to be able to stall here with a few heroes, but they're at a disadvantage. There's the Doomfist punch. Renee is down. Tap is just going to be left to his own devices now, and this should be the cap for Indignation.
Overtime meter still going on as players are streaming back on for Oblivion, but Tap just too much to handle along with Sucrax, and now the overtime meter will go out. 1-0 lead for Indignation on this map of Busan.
And it really just comes down to that ultimate economy, Bosco, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. You saw the Gravitic Flux gets no value whatsoever. That means Oblivion has to throw every single one of their ultimates into that last fight. They get a bit panicked there, and Indignation are like, all right, that's totally fine. We're going to get this to 99%. We have Gravitic Flux advantage. As soon as that sound barrier happens, they know that the fight is over because there's nothing to deal with the Gravitic Flux. You have a Coalescence, but Coalescence isn't going to do enough healing to deal with that much damage.
They do have a map here to try and collect themselves for Oblivion. They haven't lost this map just yet, but of course in dire straits. We are now on Shrine 2, which we know is a point where you're really not going to change up much more than likely for both of these teams.
Yeah, I would be interested to see if Bepis decides to play something like a May here, but it looks like he's just going to go full mirror matching the Doomfist, and this would be a map where you're in such an enclosed area where I think the May could gain some value because you're more of a brawly style on this point as the Doomfist punch goes out, but it's already Indignation getting the 2 kills that they need, and this should be a fight done and dusted for them, Labasco.
Tap, the one who's getting 3 eliminations to really solidify the win for Indignation, and gets one at the end too, uppercutting Renee out of the fight.
I mean, you can see already how much value Tap is getting out of the Doomfist compared to Bepis. He has a 30% ultimate advantage already, and you see how much shield he already has still on his health bar. That means he's getting a lot of value with the seismic slams and with the punches onto multiple people. That's got to be up to Shade as well, comboing with the halts very, very well from him and Tap.
How do you slow down Tap is the question Oblivion has to ask themselves. They move around towards where those statues are, starting to come towards the point now. Accretion Rock out, doesn't hit anything though, but now Coalescence to really force their way in, and Fi is able to take advantage of what's been created thanks to the Coalescence. Straight down early on in the fight, and Psycha player to follow afterwards. Still have to take care of Tap. Nice rocket punch to cancel out his, and they will have the flip come through for Oblivion.
Yeah, and even though Oblivion lost that first fight, so much damage was done to them that Slay was able to farm up towards that Coalescence, and that Coalescence advantage really gave Oblivion that fight win. But for Indignation, this is very good for them because you got 42%, so that's a pretty hefty time percentage bank for just winning that first fight, and they have a lot of ultimates coming into this next fight. They're way ahead in terms of ultimate economy going into this next fight instead of Oblivion.
Fi is ahead, though, as far as the Reapers are concerned. So as far as the DP ults, that's one that they are forward. But now their Coalescence, their opportunity to push in and tap, coming down and slamming into Renee, already losing the Sigma, a major loss. Meteor Strike out 2 from tap. Not going to find anything, but that's okay. The advantage has been created, and they're cleaning it up.
Yeah, and I like that they're going to be able to win this fight by just using only 2 ultimates, just the Meteor Strike, and they use the Coalescence as well, so not a hefty ultimate investment for this fight. But the issue is, coming back into this next fight, Oblivion has a treasure trove of ultimates, almost a 6-pack for them. This is going to really be based off the back of ANJ here. If he can hit a huge sound barrier to negate a lot of the damage that's going to be coming in here, because Oblivion realistically should win this next fight because of the ultimate advantage that they have.
And the one ultimate to take care of that sound barrier is the one that they don't have in Renee. Trying to get up to that Coalescence out here first. Going to use the sound barrier pretty early on. SFX going to counter with his as well. And out comes the Death Blossom. And it gets 2, 3 dead things to fight. Gets a 4th at the end.
Yeah, Bongo Blossom, a combo, a tail is oldest time in this meta, Labasco, and it gets so much value. And the disastrous thing there here for Indignation is that ANJ used that sound barrier very early, which means that he's not going to have it for that next fight against Renee. So this Gravitic Flux is going to get an insane amount of value, especially because Suprex also isn't close to that Coalescence. He might be able to get it before this next fight, but it's going to be very risky.
And Beth is going to be able to combine the Meteor Strike with it if they want to do that. We'll see how they decide to use this Gravitic Flux. Players get halted in. Only one, though. Psycha player coming through with a triple kill of his own with his Death Blossom. The Coalescence at the end to make sure they get the flip back.
That was so smart from Indignation as a whole. They know that they know that Renee is going to hit that Gravitic Flux, so they say, okay, we're going to throw down our Bongos, we're going to throw down our Death Blossom, there's going to be no Kinetic Grasp to deal with it, and we're going to be able to win this fight. Well played from Indignation, and now this is last fight territory for them.
They don't have many ults, though, for the side of Indignation. Bephis is at least going to have the Meteor Strike in this, coming in onto those players in the back line. Throws out the Meteor Strike now, too, looking for the opportunity to pull it in. Not going to get anybody, but SFX is going to get tapped as he comes down. So you at least are able to get one from Indignation, at least for the point here. By able to follow it up with another. So this is looking pretty good for Oblivion. They should be able to take this right back with the overtime meter going.
And you also forced out Coalescence, which is really good for Indignation coming into this next fight, because this is definitely last fight here for both of these teams. If Indignation wins this next fight, they're going to win the map, and they have an ultimate advantage coming into it. They have both the support ultimates, which is something that Oblivion does not have. This is going to be a very difficult fight for Oblivion to win because the sustain for Indignation might just be too much, Labasco.
Tap coming out with the Meteor Strike almost immediately. Players get pulled into it. Nobody falling yet except for Tap. He died immediately after he used that ultimate by making that happen. Overtime meter now starting for Indignation as they are able to at least stream onto the point to keep this going. Coalescence now coming out for Oblivion. Death Blossoms on either side. It takes out the Supercharger, and now the Gravitic Flux pulling players into the air. Nobody getting killed from it is the only problem. Tap coming back in with the Rocket Punch, but his team has lost a few players. This is looking good for Oblivion, and Tap goes down.
Tap is down, but there's just 2 people left on the point for Indignation. They don't have any ultimates either. They have to make the swap to the Hammond to get back onto the point and contest Labasco.
They still have these 2 players staying alive. Here comes that Hammond into the fight, but the Hammond is all that's pretty much left. And A&J, they're stalling this out, but are they going to have enough bodies? No! The Rocket Punch in hits Psycha as soon as he comes into the fight, and Oblivion is taking us to another map here on this Busan control point.
Oblivion playing this so close on that last map. It looked like there was no way that they were going to be able to win that last map, but a very aggressive play from Tap, who dies playing very aggressive into Oblivion there, gets absolutely bursted down by Fi on that Reaper. There's no healing available to them, and once you lose that Doomfist, you lose that one-shot potential of Bosco, and that's something you need in those later fights when it's 99-99. You need picks and you need trades, and without a Doomfist, it's very hard to get those very quickly.
especially when you're already behind like that. So now we come onto Mecha Base for the final map, Kenobi. I don't expect any changes. I mean, why would they change here, right?
Yeah, I mean, both of these teams seem to have their advantages when it comes to this composition. Again, the only difference I would maybe see would be Beppis switching over to the Mei, but it looks like he's going to play the Doomfist, and look out for the start. Which Doomfist is going to get the most value first? Beppis misses his punch.
He does miss his punch, but he's still at least dealing a little bit of damage, even as far as ultimate charge. Both of these teams still pretty healthy up until this point. Tap was taken down at least for a moment, but they couldn't follow up to take him out of the fight, and Beppis coming back in now has himself an ultimate advantage. Tap trying to counter, coming back in himself, but Beppis hits him up into the air, and the Coalescence dueling on either side. Psycho Player, the first one to fall. Indignation losing here on Mecha Base at the start.
And Slay gets the ultimate, the Coalescence just a sliver before Sucrax did, and that's just enough that Oblivion needs to take that fight, and too much damage available to them. They get the kills that they need, and they're able to cap this first point. Coming back into this fight, not a lot of ultimates to talk about just yet because that fight was so scrappy. The biggest one is A&J has this sound barrier. Will he use it aggressively, or will he wait for the sound or for the Gravitic Flux from Renee?
Indignation trying to pull a fast one, going one direction and then going the other to try and get out into an area so they're not caught in the choke. They're able to get out for the most part, but there comes the Meteor Strike through for Beppis. Not much value out of it. It's canceled out by the sound barrier, and A&J is able to take advantage and get down Doge, but the counter doesn't do anything for the Gravitic Flux. Slay is able to get Alex, but they've already lost a couple in this fight.
Yeah, and I think this is it. This is going to be Indignation taking this fight here. And the best part about this for them is they're going to have ultimates to equalize the ultimates that are becoming from Oblivion in this next fight. Just some stragglers left on the point here, Labasco. And what I like a lot from what Shade is doing on this Orisa is Shade is making sure that every time Beppis is diving in, he's getting halted. So he can't just get in and get out for free. He has to maybe work for a little bit more. And it's hindering his potential to play this Doomfist at the highest level he wants to.
Oblivion now regrouping themselves, coming back up. Indignation positioned on the high ground, waiting for them to do so. See where they decide to go. They're going to try and come up through this high ground, almost immediately throwing out the Supercharger to his Doge, but he goes right into a Death Blossom. Psycho Player with a triple kill.
Too much DPS ults for Indignation for Oblivion to handle there, and Indignation wipes the floor with Oblivion in that fight. Best case scenario for them is they also keep their Gravitic Flux, and SFX used his sound barrier in that last fight. That means he's not going to have it for this fight, and as we know, Labasco, sound barrier, the most important ultimate against something like Gravitic Flux.
Meteor Strike coming out immediately from Beppis, and it goes right into A&J, so you lose that sound barrier potential that could come out, but now you have the Gravitic Flux, but the Death Blossom is able to get Psycho Player down. Fi trying to be the hero here. Tap able to rocket punch into one, but Oblivion will get this flip back.
And again, these Reapers have such good understandings of when they can get the best value with these Death Blossom ultimates, and there it's Fi, knowing that the Gravitic Flux is up in the air. That means there's no kinetic grass to eat it. He can get a free ultimate into the tank line, and there's just not enough sustain because A&J was already down. They don't have the ability to kite away from it with that speed boost. So now, coming into this next fight, still not a lot of ultimates to talk about. A&J, again, he's off kilter with this charge when it comes to that Gravitic Flux. Will he use it aggressively again?
That's going to be one of the things we have to watch out for here. A&J looking for that timing, has been very aggressive up until this point with those sound barriers too. Neither team creating an advantage just yet, and then the boot kill onto Doge gives the advantage over to Indignation, and now it's Renee down two. Indignation taking control of this point once again. It's back and forth here on our third point on this control.
And Labasco, they won that fight vanilla too, which the most important thing here. Oblivion just trying to stall, but they aren't going to be able to. They get it to 90%. Not quite that last fight territory win, but they're very close. It might just be what they need. And again, this is getting close towards that last fight territory, Labasco. The ultimate's coming in this next fight. Coalescence is an advantage that Indignation has because they have the Bongo and Supercharger to match it.
It's an all Fiesta already, dueling Coalescences along with that Gravitic Flux. Down comes, Psycho Player. I think he accidentally hit that button a little too early. He didn't get anything with his Death Blossom, and Slay is able to get tapped down, so you lose the burst potential. And now it's going to be Oblivion who's going to take this right from underneath the nose of the players left of Indignation. They're trying to stay alive to wait for those few players.
Yeah, Indignation can't die here, but now they have to get someone onto the point. Someone has to be able to touch here. It's at 99%.
Oh, they're just able to get there. Tap comes right back in to get that touch and dies. As a result, Death Blossom out from Fi to try and keep those players away. They get pulled up into the air by the Gravitic Flux. They're able to get Bepis, but
the Supercharger.
Alex with another third. Alex trying to be the hero for Indignation. Still some players left alive on either team.
Alex is trying his best. He uses that kinetic grass to get some shields. He kills Fi as well. Indignation might have this.
Indignation able to come back from the brink, and they're going to get the flip. 4% they have to build up. Somebody has to try and get a touch. Oh, A&J gets the boop on Slay. They're not going to be able to get back. They just get back in time at least for 2, but they've lost so many heroes. This is Indignation's to lose.
They've made so many swaps as well. They don't have the ultimate economy. Bepis is down.
Bepis coming back. Renee coming back in on the Reinhardt, trying to swing that hammer around, and he's going to die almost immediately. Players still streaming back in for Oblivion, desperately trying to hold on. Their coalescence just being outplayed by the amount of players left alive for Indignation, and they will go up 2-0. What a wild game we had for our first map between these two teams in our grand finals. Indignation 2-0.
I mean, Labasco, if this is more of what we have to come, this is going to be an insane series. Definitely could see this going all the way to 7 games. Both of these teams play that so close, but Alex comes in extremely clutch on that Sigma, gets the kills, gets a huge Gravitic Flux as well, when it looked like it was a point where Oblivion had that fight win, but the clutch plays, again, I can't stress enough how good Indignation is playing from behind, right? They had, like, Tap was dead in that fight. It was a 6v5, it was a 5v6 for them, a huge Gravitic Flux from Alex there on that Sigma, and then they're able to win the fight off of the damage that was comboed with the Supercharger. Just an insane play from Indignation, and I can't wait to see more of these games, Labasco. That was hype.
Credit to Shade to get that Supercharger down to allow Alex to have that miraculous comeback work. Yeah, if this is what we're in store for, we can be in for a nice, fun time throughout this grand finals. That's what we hope for. Obviously, Hollywood, it looks like, is going to be our next map, Kenobi. And when we look at what we've seen already, I mean, these two teams have kind of been battling back and forward on this base composition with the Reaper Doomfist. Hollywood does throw in a couple of wrinkles, though, depending on what teams decide to do. But they could also just play the Reaper and the Doomfist.
Yeah, I mean, it was close for both of those teams, and without some clutch plays, it could have gone Oblivion's way, or it could have continued to stay Indignation's way. But I think what I would like to see from Oblivion is maybe bring out the May. This is definitely a good map for it, because you can abuse the walls a little bit more than something like Control on Mecha Base. And from Bepis, what I've seen from him so far, when he's using those walls, he's usually very good at sectioning off teams from each other. And I know in ranked, when you're playing against a May who's just something like that good, and you're just like, how do we even beat this? It feels like it's the same way with Oblivion, but Indignation has shown that they're able to beat something like that. So I wonder if Oblivion will just say, all right, we're going to continue to try and play the standards. The closest we've been so far to beating this team, because like I mentioned before, when they played on Control that first time, Indignation won really handily. That was a much closer Control than it was for their last time they played.
That could spell very well for them going on for Oblivion as we start to load into Hollywood. They are going to stay on defense, or in the blue, I guess, should be Indignation. It will be still attacking. Oblivion will be attacking here, so we're going to get to see what Indignation decides to do. I mean, they are just so good on this base composition. I don't expect them really to switch, because they don't really need to.
Yeah, they would be a team I wouldn't expect to switch. We usually sometimes see some wrinkles in terms of compositions on this map, especially on the first defense, where you can see things like, you know, the Bastion bunker type of defense, which we saw a lot played from here for the Skins. We saw them play some interesting compositions on this map, specifically on the defense as well. We saw them play like bunker with McCree and stuff like that. But for these two teams, again, I think the best composition in the game right now is this Doomfist Reaper. I think there's no reason, unless you're Bepis and you think you can maybe use the May to a more advantageous situation, to switch this composition, because you almost, like, that was a very close Control map. You almost won that. There's no reason to switch it now. You still have to lose 2 more games. After this map, if you lose, then you might start thinking about making changes to the wheel.
So Indignation staying on the comp that has gotten them to this point. And on the other side for Oblivion, well, they're going to answer right back with the mirror. So mirror compositions once again here on Hollywood.
We're going to see both of these teams. They're going to be seeing that what Oblivion is going to do here. I wonder if they're going to rotate through and try and take the high ground away from Indignation here, as we see the Lucio going for a boot, but SFX gets caught.
Oh, that's a major loss at the beginning, Kenobi. You're probably going to wait here if you're ex-Oblivion. Don't want to feed over any more alt charge. Not that you've given up that much yet, but still, this is such a good stall tactic coming out thanks to Indignation getting that kill.
That was a very good read from the entirety of Indignation there. They saw SFX going to the high ground to try and get a boop them off of it, but they hit a really nice halt accretion combo and then blow up the Lucio afterwards. So that's a lot of time taken off the clock already for Oblivion.
Well, now they drop over to the point, maybe trying to stop the rotation that would come through, but SFX is able to get tapped down. So ex-Oblivion creating an advantage for themselves. Players getting pulled in by the halt, but they are on the point. It's now the onus is on Indignation to do something, and all they're going to do is die.
Yeah, and they're going to use the Coalescence as well. That's one Sucrax is going to want to have back, especially that Oblivion has the Coalescence advantage now coming into this next fight. And as we know, Labasco, point B of Hollywood is very easily snowballable if you have those ultimate advantages, because you can push through those choke points a little bit easier, because this first choke as well as the second choke are very hard to get through if you're at an ultimate disadvantage. But Oblivion has the ultimate advantage, so they're looking good. They're looking pretty going into this point B.
Yeah, luckily for them, the only really player who's been eliminated up until this point was that early limb that happened on SFX. So they are in a very good position. They don't get stuck at that early choke either, is the good thing too. The fight coming a little bit after the choke, so you can get positioned pretty well if you are ex-Oblivion, kind of just poking at each other for the moment. And now they will use the advantage they have with that Coalescence being used earlier, and Slade just pushing his way through, and Psycho player falls, and they're going to be able to keep this going thanks to that ult advantage.
Yeah, too much healing and damage coming out from the Coalescence for Indignation to deal with, and Oblivion keeps this cart rolling towards that point B capture. And again, they have the ultimates to work with to continue this snowball. The good thing about this for Indignation is they're coming up on their ultimates as well, so this is going to be a particle effect fight, Labasco, like I like to call it, coming into this next fight. This is the last contest that Indignation is going to be able to get before they lose this point if they lose this fight.
Gravitic Flux is going to come out here immediately from Renee. Not going to find anything thanks to the sound barrier. Now Coalescence back up, though, for Sucrax, who is going to use it immediately. And now the Supercharger down will help Psycho Player get that first limb. Meteor Strike from Tap to the back line, and they will stop the cart here short. The worst place on this street space to stop the cart if you are ex-Oblivion.
Yeah, because the respawns are so much closer for the defense, and for the offense, you have to walk so far, Labasco, to get back to this payload. And in that last fight, I really like what Shade did on that Orisa. He waited out the Doomfist Meteor Strike from Beppis, and then he put down his Supercharger, knowing that if he had used it before, Beppis very easily could have just Meteor Striked onto the Supercharger and then killed it, and then he had that damage available to him for the rest of his team to win that fight.
Still a lot of ultimates, though, for ex-Oblivion, and they start off immediately with Tap down, and they were ready for Fi to drop from the tight ropes above, and they have themselves this points, no problem.
And this is the second time this map where Tap has got caught a little bit too aggressive, and Fi has been doing such a good job on this Reaper, checking the Doomfist every time he goes in. Tap isn't just left to his own devices on the Doomfist to get the kills that he wants and pop off like we've seen him do before.
Wow, they try to get aggressive to take those players who got caught in the early spawn for ex-Oblivion, but Indignation is able to escape from it, Kenobi.
It's not that bad that they didn't get the kills. It would have been nice. They would have been able to push the card a little bit more, but it's not too bad as Tap annihilates Fide while he teleports.
And Coalescence out here afterwards to ensure that they can follow up on what comes through thanks to Tap's beautiful Doomfist to create an opportunity.
Yeah, that must have felt really good for Tap, Labasco, because this entire map so far, Fi has been checking Tap and making sure that Tap hasn't been able to pop up on the Doomfist, but there he's like, oh, you're teleporting right in front of me? Here's a Doomfist punch into the wall. You're dead, my friend.
That was odd. Fi just switched off of Reaper and then switched right back, so his ult has been reset. Gravitic Flux, though, out. Death Blossom to counter doesn't really work from Psycho Player. Keeps players away. They have used their sound barrier as well, so a lot of ultimates being used by Indignation. Ex-Oblivion just kiting back away from everything, too. So now that they've healed back up, they can come right back in and maybe have an advantage created for themselves, and Beppis is going to make sure that happens, and the Coalescence afterwards. Beppis now, it's his turn to show off on the Doomfist.
Yeah, and that was the best possible pick Beppis could have had because Alex had that gravitic flux available to him, and he probably would have been able to stop the enemy team from pushing as far as they did. Luckily for Oblivion here, SFX did keep his sound barrier, so he has it available to him in this next fight. The only unfortunate thing is Coalescence and Bongo advantage is in the favor of Indignation in this next fight.
Indignation coming right back onto that cart, getting close to that VIP box where the cart finishes. Vi able to get Psycho Player down with the help of the Supercharger Coalescence to counter, but Sound Barrier is out to keep everybody alive through it, and the Gravitic Flux coming out at the end might not be enough. Alex is going to get only one with it, and they're not going to be able to stall long enough to stop this cart. Nice poop onto A&J. 2:16 on the clock for Oblivion.
Super well played from Indignation in that last fight, or rather Oblivion in that last fight. They throw down the Orisa Bongo early enough where they know that Indignation doesn't have the Coalescence to burn it immediately, and in a position where even if you had Coalescence, it would be very difficult to destroy it. But they use that damage, they use the damage that they have with the Supercharger, and they're able to win the fight. And 2 minutes and 16 seconds is definitely a very good time bank when it comes to Hollywood. Usually we see teams finish around that 1 minute, 30-second mark, but 2 minutes and 16 seconds, absolutely nothing to scoff at, Labasco.
Yeah, above average, not blazing fast, but still very good for the side of Oblivion. Indignation now, the onus goes on to them for their offense. For Oblivion, like you said, they've been starting to really play even in this Reaper Doomfist comp, which is something that they struggled with in previous matchups between these teams. They seem to be figuring things out. Like you said, they've been making it difficult on Tap to work.
Yeah, Tap has really kind of been the player who throughout this tournament and this EU OD practice season has been the person that Indignation has really relied on besides Alex on that Sigma, but it's usually Tap who's popping off, whether it's on the Pharah or whether it's on the Doomfist. And here, like I've been talking about before, Fi is doing a phenomenal job along with Doge in checking the Doomfist. They're either halting the Doomfist so he doesn't get the value, or it's just Fi who is sitting there and making sure that when the Doomfist goes in, he's taking a ton of damage to where resources are needed to keep him alive, and even then sometimes it's not even enough.
Fi was on Team Germany for a reason as a DPS player, and we're getting a good view of that in this grand final so far. Oblivion, though, down 2-0 still, so they need to mount a great defense here to try and get themselves back to within one map. Indignation staying with the same composition we've seen throughout. Don't need to highlight that much because it's not going to change too much, it seems, between these two teams. Uppercut gets a lot of players into the air for Oblivion, and Fi going in, dealing a good amount of damage before he has to wraith back out. But Psycho Player and the rest of Indignation still alive. They're not finding any eliminations yet.
Yeah, Sucrex is going to have the advantage, though, with the Coalescence. It comes out now. It's a little bit earlier than the one from Slay.
And that gives FSFX gives him to go down. Beppis does follow up onto Sucrex, but his team is already down a few players. This is still a tough spot for Indignation to try and take this point. They're starting to get split off from each other.
The Tab is going to go in. Psycho Player does get Slay, so that's a lot of healers down for Oblivion. I don't think Oblivion is going to be able to come back onto this point. It should be Indignation here with the respawn advantages that they have taking it.
They do have a lot of players getting back together, though, for Oblivion. They're kind of just waiting here. They're going to probably give up a few ticks before they decide to come in and recontest, allow their team to try and get back. Meteor Strikes coming on top of each other. Neither Doomfist is able to get anything from it, though. And now we're kind of in a really weird stalemate between these two teams as respawners are starting to come and work their way back in.
The Psycho Player does have this Death Blossom, though, and they're all in a confined area. Is Oblivion.
They're going to use this Coalescence here. Now the Death Blossom coming out. Not going to get any value because of the boop. Awesome boop coming through. Sound Barrier down. Gravitic Flux. Oblivion with their opportunity if they can follow up on it. Now the Gravitic Flux pulling players in for Indignation.
Huge Flux.
Get Beptis down. There's still players left alive on either side, and now the Coalescence coming back out for Indignation.
The Coalescence is here. Is it going to be enough for them? I don't know if it is. Slay comes back with his own Coalescence, so that's huge.
This is his second in this long extended flight. The Death Blossom, oh no, it's a misclick from Fi, but his team has at least been able to force players off of the point. 2 ticks still coming through from Indignation up until this point as they work their way back on. Meteor Strike up into the air for Tap, coming right back down. Psycho Player and Shade following it up, and finally Indignation making headway.
I mean, that fight lasted so long, Labasco. It felt like it lasted for 2 minutes straight, but finally, it's Indignation who takes control of this point. Ult's going everywhere, and unfortunately, like you mentioned, Fi, a fat finger, I believe, on that ultimate, and he isn't able to use it in that fight, so Indignation has that advantage, and now coming into point B, 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Not as good as Oblivion, but still not the worst time bank in the world. They have advantage when it comes to the Coalescence. They can continue to make this push.
3 minutes and 30 seconds to push through this Streets phase. Not as big of a time bank as we saw from Oblivion. So Oblivion at least winning that first point as far as time, but Psycho Player and Tap combining for 2 and now 3 thanks to that Death Blossom.
Yeah, that's going to be done and dusted. The ultimates from Indignation, a little bit too much for Oblivion to handle. Luckily, they used both of them. They used the Death Blossom and the Coalescence at the same time. So they are going to lose both of those for just that one fight win and continue this push onto point B. Coming back, though, the main thing that's going to be you're going to be looking for is you're going to be looking for that Coalescence Supercharger combination, because that does a surprising amount of damage. And if Oblivion can win that fight just based off of that or force out the sound barrier, that means that this Gravitic Flux from Renee should be free.
Going to work a lot of time off just based on where the cart already is. Rocket punch into Sucrux, but Slay dead as well. So no Moiras on either side, but Beppis right into Shade. Rocket punching into Tap. Both players down on the ground. Beppis dies, but so does Tap. Oblivion wins this fight.
I love that play from Oblivion there. They use the Coalescence very aggressively and catch Indignation completely off guard. They aren't ready for it to come out without the Supercharger. That means that Oblivion keeps the Supercharger as well for this next fight, Labasco. That's insane.
A lot of ultimates coming up for this next fight too, Kenobi. You're going to have the particle effects flying.
Yeah, a lot of particle effects here, and it's going to be based off of really these sound barriers from both of these Lucio players. How much value are they going to get against these Gravitic Fluxes?
Well, Supercharger goes down almost immediately from Renee. Death Blossom coming out afterwards, but Beppis is down. Tap comes through with a Meteor Strike into another, and Shade able to get his counterpart and Doge down. Indignation will keep the cart moving.
And that was a really aggressive play from Oblivion, but it doesn't end up working out. Really good kiting from Indignation to get away from the Bongo Blossom combo, and then they re-engage knowing they have the advantage in the damage department and the healing department. A lot of ultimates used for Oblivion there to no value at all.
Players going to come back, though, for Oblivion. They're going to have one more contest onto this cart. 1:25 left to go for this time bank. Gravitic Flux pulling players into the air. Coalescence Supercharger used on the other side. Fi able to get Psycho Player down. Even with all of that, Gravitic Flux needs to be massive here. Alex gets a lot of players low. Finishes off Beptis afterwards, but Shade falling as well. Oblivion too much in the bank, and they're going to keep this cart from moving. A minute left to go.
Tap is still alive, though.
He's trying to make it keep going, but they're still forced off the cart.
And actually, this fight is taking a lot of time, Labasco, so this is close to getting to the point where this is the last fight for Indignation here. The respawns are so much closer for Oblivion. This is almost a disastrous situation for them. They need to win this fight.
Nobody getting caught out either. Psycho Player goes down at the beginning of the fight. 40 seconds left to go, like you said. Rocket punching his way in to try and find some more as Beppis. They're starting to retreat now, finally, for Indignation.
Yeah, you have to get out here for Indignation. Now, this is last fight territory for them. Again, this is the worst possible place for this cart to be stalled at, Labasco. You mentioned it in that last round, and for Indignation, a lot of these ultimates have to hit pay dirt here. You have to keep this sound barrier from ANJ to deal with the Gravitic Flux Renee is going to have. You do have a Coalescence advantage slightly if you use it aggressively enough.
You do have the advantage, too, on Death Blossom. About to get his up as Psycho Player. Coalescence here. Meteor Strike coming down. Sound barrier keeping everybody alive, though, through it. So now, out comes the Death Blossom. Renee is able to take him down. They didn't get to the cart. They didn't get to the cart. Oblivion's going to win the map.
Tap tried to go around the side through the jail, but doesn't end up getting to the cart because, again, it's Fi who is there checking the Doomfist. Make sure he isn't able to play at his game, and they can't get to the cart, unfortunately, for Indignation. And Oblivion tie it up, Labasco.
Not quite tie it up. 2-1.
Oh, 2-1. Tie it up.
On the map that played. Yes.
We've only played 2 maps. I got ahead of myself there a little bit.
That's okay. It's all right. the extra win that they get for Indignation always is confusing. But you're right, though. Yeah. Oblivion winning that way, massive, getting them back into this series. You talked about earlier about how having that early advantage for Indignation is so great to have. But to just cut into it the way that Oblivion did on this map of Hollywood has to give them confidence to what we're going to go into next.
especially because of the way they've adapted, right? And the way that they have, we talked about the other games that they played so far between two of these teams, and it's been Indignation who's been in the driver's seat for a lot of those. And now Oblivion, they kind of have a read on what Indignation is doing. So in these next couple of maps, is Indignation going to finally be the one who has to adapt themselves?
That's what we're going to have to watch for. Volskaya Industries is going to be our next map, Kenobi. But before we get to that, we're going to take a timeout. When we come back, we'll see if Oblivion can even the series up 2-2. We welcome you back to the Europe Open Division Grand Finals. Labasco and Kenobi here with you, currently 2-1 in favor of Indignation, but Oblivion with the big win on the last map to get this one within one. Kenobi, we go to Volskaya Industries for our next map. We also have a side switch for both of these teams. Indignation will now be attacking first, and it'll be Oblivion defending. So a little bit of a wrinkle here for both of these teams, and Volskaya, honestly, probably more the same unless they decide they want to go with a Farah for Indignation.
Yeah, we could see a Farah, we could see Hanzo, we could see May from either of these teams. I mean, with Oblivion and how they've played this map in previous series, we saw them in their last one. They played May on this map quite often against Only Here for Skins or We're Here for Skins, sorry. I think it was Hats was their name, right?
Well, Hats, and they're here for I thought it was sprays.
Here for the sprays. Oh, yeah, because it's sprays, not skins.
Yeah.
Two S words that kind of confuse me. But it is going to be Oblivion coming back out on this defense, and they're going to be putting Beppis on this May. So I talked about this a little bit earlier and like how I wanted him to play this specific hero, because Beppis, especially on this map, has a really good idea and understanding of how to use walls to their maximum potential to section off enemy teams from each other. And in this composition that Indignation is running, you usually want to be able to keep in a group. And if Beppis is able to hit these walls good enough, he is going to be able to section off those heroes and maybe get some kills in the process.
The speculation, too, about the fair... Well, we had it for a second, and then Tap's like, you know what? No. Switching over. See, Saika's going to switch as well.
So we're not going to be having the Hanzo. Interesting choice, because the Hanzo does bring a little bit more shield break, but it seems like Indignation wants that more one-shot potential and the brawl potential that the Reaper and Doofus brings.
Tap will just knock everybody off of the high ground, too, with the help, too, of A&J from behind. Tap has to be careful, though. It's getting extremely low. Able to get back, though, with the rest of Indignation, who now is stuck in this room. They've got to force their way out into the rest of Oblivion, who's just waiting for them. They didn't have a wall to put up is the only thing. So these players are able to get out for Indignation, but now the wall comes through. Alex getting caught on the wrong side of it, but Tap is able to get SFX down, but they do lose Alex as a result too. So it's an even fight, 5v5. Ice block out here, and now the Coalescence coming through to keep themselves up for Oblivion, but Indignation still making themselves in this fight.
Yeah, no one has checked Tap this entire time so far. He's been getting picks in the backline, and there, Meteor strikes onto Renee, and that's going to be Indignation taking this first point pretty quickly, Labasco. And unfortunately for Oblivion, they really were just trying to play the ground game, didn't realize the flankers there from Indignation rather were on their point getting those kills, and they just let Tap get a couple of punches, and it was unfortunately for them, they were able to lose that point.
At the very least, so they do have the Blizzard built up, though, which is pretty much a fight win, is the one good thing for this next fight, so they should be able to stop any snowball, and there's no ultimates up for Oblivion, or Indignation, excuse me, in this next fight. So Oblivion not in the worst of spots. Supercharger is close, though, for Shade, up on that high ground. Players trying to just poke right now at each other.
Yeah, and it's going to be very difficult as well to see what A&J is going to be doing with this Lucio Soundbarrier, because he has to deal with the Gravitic Flux and the May ult. Which one is he going to use it for, and is there going to be enough sustain after that?
Well, they're going to throw out that Blizzard as soon as the players come in. Death Blossom out, but Psycho player takes 2 down. Tap nobody getting frozen up for too long, and now advantage created by Indignation. Just have to deal with Fi and Beppis, the only players left alive.
Tap played that so well. He went after Renee, knowing that Renee had that Gravitic Flux, and now the Gravitic Flux gets absolutely no value. It's going to have to be a desperate one here at the end.
Pulling players up into the end. That'll at least pull players off so they can contest with no issue. Soundbeer keeping everybody up, but Tap does fall to Doge, who came back on the Wrecking Ball. Slay back onto the point with a Coalescence of their own. Both teams now just dueling with those Coalescence. Still advantage, though, for at least the moment for Indignation, but they do lose Alex. But Psycho player on this Reaper is doing so much work, keeping them in front for Indignation.
SFX has a sound barrier. He uses it here right in time for the Death Blossom.
Death Blossom, though, does force off the rest of that sound barrier, and SFX dies almost immediately after it's gone. Players just coming on to stall for Oblivion at this point. Fi coming back on, Death Blossoming himself, but he's not getting any value out of it. There was a shield in the way, and now the Supercharger down. Meteor Strike onto the point to help clear it off. They have a little bit of percentage left to go, and they'll finally get it. 3:26 onto the time bank for Indignation.
And again, with Indignation, it's so incredible how good they are at playing at a disadvantage. We saw them go into that fight. They had ultimate disadvantage because there was that gravitic flux available from Renee and the May ult that you could have layered on top of it. But a really well-played Doomfist dive from Tap takes Renee out of the fight completely. So that means that Indignation has the advantage. They can decide when they want to sound barrier, and they can play a little bit more aggressive and not as reactionary against those ultimates that Oblivion had.
Especially, too, you're fighting through a blizzard. They knew how they wanted to deal with it. They had the read that the fact that the blizzard was up. They waited for their supercharger to go forward, and then they just threw it down and just took players out before they could even get onto where the blizzard was, and everybody avoids it. It was just masterfully done by Indignation, but Oblivion has a chance here to match this, and it's still, they did have a very good stagger on the second point. This is still, there is potential to beat this time bank.
Yeah, 3 minutes and 26 seconds. I mean, Volskaya has always been that map where you either don't complete it at all, you complete one half of it, or you get like a 5-minute time bank or something like that. There's usually like never any in between when it comes to this map, or we get like six rounds of assault or something like that. Like that's usually where we're at with this map in particular. And I definitely wouldn't be shocked if we get something like that, the 6 CP as it's, called in some of those places. But on the defense here, we're going to be seeing an interesting variant from Indignation. They're going to be taking Tap off the Doomfist, putting him on the Pharah, and Tap's Pharah has been something we haven't seen this series in particular, but we've seen throughout this playoffs, and he's very good at playing it. He has a good understanding of how to play around these sight lines, especially on Volskaya, play around the geometry, and make himself play a little bit safer than if he was just playing out in the open.
Psycho player is on the Hanzo as well, and this gets scouted out by this team in Oblivion, and they make swaps themselves. Got a Hanzo of their own, and they're staying with the May on for Fi. Oh, Fi is now on the May.
Yeah, that's a tongue twister right there. And both of these heroes with the May and the Hanzo are very good at putting pressure onto the pharmacy combo, so that's why we're seeing that switch. Also, you offer some shield break with Hanzo as well from Beppis, so that's why we're going to be seeing those particular heroes. And Beppis already gets a kill onto Psycho player. That's a resurrection.
Winning that Hanzo v Hanzo duel, taking out the res already in the fight. Major Fi able to get Alex down early on too, so this looks like it could be a very quick take coming through for Oblivion. Tap does manage to get Dosh, is the only thing, and now it's just Shade on the point.
Yeah, Beppis winning that Hanzo battle was extremely important because the Mercy had to go off of the Pharah there and resurrect the Hanzo. That means that Tap had to play a little bit more conservative and couldn't continuously put out pressure from that Pharah because he didn't have the pocket and was worried about Beppis and Fi doing their damage to him. So it's going to be Oblivion taking this point. An advantage as well because Indignation weren't playing the support heroes that they have now. Oblivion has Coalescence advantage going into this next fight. They could very easily snowball this, Lobosco.
They switch off of a lot of players, too. Switch their DPS as well, so you still have ultimates that are building up. Fi is getting close to that. About to have the Dragon Strike as well for Beppis, so a lot of ultimates to work with here. Coalescence going to be the first one that they have. We'll see when they decide to drop down. They slowly trickle low. Dragon Strike out to separate the players, and then Coalescence follow up afterwards, forcing this team back in Indignation. They have to work their way back to the point, though, and Beppis is able to take advantage of it. Alex and Shade already out of the fight, and the wall keeping them from getting on.
Yeah, the only way here that Indignation could come back from this if Tap goes absolutely ham on this point and gets a couple of kills, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, Lobosco. This is just stall tactics right now. A well-placed wall as well from Fi.
And now the blizzard comes out, so those players that come through after the wall goes down immediately frozen up. And there's the time bank, 4:39, a whole minute above what you have for Indignation.
See what I say? It's like a 5-minute time bank. I was close. I was 20 seconds off, okay?
Close
21
enough,
seconds. I was close enough. I was close. We round up in Overwatch.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. That we'll let it slide this time. It's grand finals. You're trying to be perfect, but you can't always.
Yeah.
But looking at this from the side of Indignation, Kenobi, this you can't be too worried. You still had a pretty good attack yourselves. It just had the constant stream of people coming back. That's the only reason why their time bank is smaller.
Yeah, and it didn't, like, their attack wasn't the worst as well. They had some brief moments where the fights took a little bit longer than they probably should have, and that's why they have a little bit lower of a time bank, like you mentioned. But I like that we're seeing variance from both these teams, and even if it's not working out, I like that they're trying some other things. Like we saw Tap play the Pharaoh, we saw Beppis go to the Hanzo, when the Mei has really been his signature hero throughout this tournament so far, as well as the Doomfist. So I like the variation that we're seeing from both these teams. Is Oblivion on the defense going to be bringing to the table what they brought that first defense, the Mei Reaper again, offering a little bit more brawl potential. And I wonder if Indignation is going to continue to run their composition that we've seen them run throughout this tournament as well, the Reaper Doomfist, or are they going to maybe play Hanzo or Pharah again on this offense?
It's very calculated, I think, is the variance that we're seeing, though, too, which I think is one thing that you always like to see if you are going to change up what you're doing. Reaper Doomfist one side, Mei Reaper on the other. Wall going up once again. They're going to try and collapse onto these players on the wrong side of the wall. Nothing as of yet, though, for Oblivion, and now they'll take down two, and Alex and Psycho player giving Oblivion this advantage.
An absolutely fantastic wall there from Beppis, sectioning off the team and making sure they couldn't rotate through that side room. And now there's just going to be some straggle kills here, Labasco from Indignation, and they're going to milk off more time off this clock. It's about a minute by the time that Indignation is going to come back onto this point. And again, they have to be very careful about these walls from Beppis. They've been absolutely deadly throughout the entirety of this tournament so far, and there, as you saw, a good example of how deadly they can be.
Have the Coalescence up too for Oblivion, so they get an ultimate advantage so early on this defense. Another wall, expertly splitting players off again. Alex falling first in the fight. Their counter Coalescence might be too little too late. They do only have the 6-on-5 advantage, and they're still trying to push this. The wall will make sure that they can heal everybody up, though, for the side of Oblivion, and now they just back off for Indignation.
And something that I absolutely love that Oblivion is doing with these Mei walls is they're comboing them with the Orisa Halt. They're pulling people forward from the Death Ball and then using the wall, like they're seeing right now.
Didn't have the wall available that time because they had to use it to get back up onto the high ground. So now they get into this room for Indignation, but they still have to work their way out of it. There's still the potential to get split off. They're going to fake going forward, come back around the way that they were. The Mei wall actually just misses, doesn't split anybody off. So now Indignation can work their way onto the point and now have the fight commence there. Supercharger down by Doge early on. Mei wall blocks off Sucrex, who's able to just get away thanks to the ability to escape on Moira. Renee, though, is able to get Psycho player down. Advantage over to Oblivion with the help of that Supercharger again. These Mei walls not exactly working out this time, but they're still winning the fight. And they used the Blizzard there, though.
That is one Beppis is going to absolutely want to have back, because this is a minute left, Labasco. If he has that ultimate for this next fight, it very easily could have been the death of Indignation's offense here, but he uses it. I have to believe that that's a misclick Labasco of some sort from Beppis, because he's been playing this Mei masterfully so far, and with these walls, I mean, maybe he doesn't even need the Blizzard.
Well, that's the thing. They have a lot of ultimates up still for Oblivion. Shade getting focused down, but able to escape and get healed up by the Coalescence. Gravitic Flux pulling players up at the sound meter there, but Vi has already taken two down. SFX falling up onto Shade.
Another great wall. Sucrax is going to go down, and this is going to be last fight for Indignation. They have the Gravitic Flux available to them, but Oblivion has kept their sound barrier available for them, and it's going to be an interesting game of chicken here for Alex, because Fi has this Reaper Death Blossom. If Alex goes a little bit too early, Fi can go into the backline and hit his Death Blossom, and there's going to be no kinetic grass to deal with it.
Death Blossom, Sound Barrier, Gravitic Flux, all the ultimates that we have, at least for the moment. Gravitic Flux pull the players up, Sound Barrier used, out comes the Death Blossom by Fi. Double kill already. Overtime meter is proc, but it's not going to matter. Everybody's falling on Indignation's side.
And that's going to be Oblivion full holding, and now Indignation will have to hold for 4 minutes and 39 seconds just to get a draw, Labasco. And I can't stress enough how phenomenally Beppis played that Mei. I mean, just every single wall, it looked like when he had it off cooldown was getting some sort of value. Even the one where we talked about where it didn't seem to get the value, it was blocking Doomfist Punch. That's really what he put it out for. The Doomfist Punch was going to come in. He saw that his team was a little bit vulnerable, puts up the wall. Doomfist Punch gets no value whatsoever. So Beppis
So
on this
Kenobi-
May really carrying his team.
Yes, for sure. Very, very good job of carrying his team to win that fight. And now we have, 4 minutes and 39 seconds. It's almost assured that if you're Oblivion, you should be able to even this up 2-2.
I mean, you're going to get, at this point, 2 ultimate rotations, maybe even more. You could possibly get 3 just to get a tick. Like, they only need 1/3 of this point, so it's a very quick win. They only need to get maybe 1 picks. Trades are in their favor because the respawn advantage is hugely in their favor on this point of the map. Defense has to walk away so far. So I think that, like, you're right. I mean, they're starting Lobosco with more time than they started off when they started the map. They have 39 more seconds. That's 2 fights probably.
So much time to try and just win this. You only have to get up ultimates. You're going to have a different defense though this time from Indignation. They're going to go with what is probably their best comp in the Reaper and the Doomfist.
Yeah, I mean, just play it slow here if you're Oblivion. You wait till Blizzard. Blizzard is a win condition right now in this current meta that we're in, so you don't need to really play for picks. You can play it slow, farm up your ultimates. Just make sure that your ultimate rotations are good, well enough to where you are also forcing ultimates out of Indignation. Don't let them stack up a 6-pack.
So they're going to come for Oblivion onto the left side of that building right before where the point is that they need to capture. Only 33% needed, 4 minutes and 8 seconds still to work. They're being very methodical with how they want to attack. They're going to boost onto the high ground with that May to do so. Try to get some players halted off. They're able to get down Doge, but they're able to collapse right back and keep their Orisa up, at least for the moment. And Vi is the hero here, taking tap down. Can't get any value out of the Doomfist. And the Coalescence already up for Slay, forcing these players back. The freeze onto the Shade, trying to take down that Orisa, but staying alive at least for the moment. Vi finally following up. And now the Coalescence to try and stay up, but this might be too little too late.
I think the trades are too in favor here for Oblivion. They're going to be able to get the kills that they need, and I think they're going to be able to take this point, Lobosco.
Tap, the only one left on the point. Players starting to come back. Sound barrier used, does manage to hit everybody. Rabbinic Flux pulls all these players up, but it only kills FFX, and now they're able to throw down the Blizzard onto the point. This is going to be the win for Oblivion, and we're going to get tied up at 2-2.
Oblivion comes back with their May strategy, and they absolutely. I mean, I think at this point, I would call that defense that they had, their second one, a dismantleization of Indignation completely. They didn't know how to deal with that May, with Beppis on that May, and they absolutely let it destroy them. So, Oblivion coming back and tying up the series, Lobosco. We're going to be in for a close one, I think.
We thought that might be what we get after the control map, and after 3 maps that we've seen, we're even up 2-2. For those of you wondering why it's 2-2, if we've only played 3 maps, Indignation, as the winner of the winner's bracket, gets the 1 map lead. So that's why they have this. We're going to be going to our next type of map, though, to Kenobi. It's going to be Escort. But before we get there, we're going to take a quick timeout. When we come back, we'll have that next map for you. Tied 2-2 for this Open Division Grand Finals. Lobosco and Kenobi bringing you through this Indignation versus Oblivion matchup. An awesome Titanic one that we've had up until this point. And now we're going to the streets of Rialto for our Escort map, Kenobi.
Yeah, now we're basically playing a best of 3, Lobosco, between both of these teams. Everything is even so far. It's 2-2. No winner's advantage anymore for Indignation, as we're going to be going to Rialto, the land of right angles, I believe, as it's called in some circles. And I wonder, again, are we going to be seeing Beppis go back to the May? Because this is, again, a map where you can really abuse chokeholds a little bit with that May wall, and it seemed like Indignation didn't really have a strategy to deal with the May walls that were coming out from Beppis. And also another option that you can bring on this map is Farah as well, because you have that infinite skybox and a lot of geometry to play around where you can get those rockets out, but also play a bit safer.
A nice little wrinkle that we're seeing come through for Oblivion. They've been changing things up, making things a little bit more difficult on Indignation. We've gone away from just all base composition, which we saw through, the first 2 or 3 maps. So the fact that we're seeing these different variations, as we highlighted earlier, has been good. And on the other side, I mean, Tab going on to the Fair wouldn't be a surprise either.
Yeah, like we talked about in that previous round, Tap is definitely a very good Pharah in his own right, and it's going to be him versus Beppis. Beppis actually foregoing the EMEA himself. He's going to let Fi play it, and it's going to be Beppis taking the 1v1 against Tap on that pharmacy battle. That's definitely something to look out for, and the difference in composition here is that Psycho player is going to be on the Hanzo, not as brawly of a hero, more has that shield break and pick potential.
Oh, but what's it matter if you've already lost Sucrax at the beginning thanks to Beppis, and now you can get aggressive for those players that are on the low ground. For Oblivion and Indignation, they're going to have to regroup now, and players they're just going to fall off the map.
Yeah, even though Doge is down, it doesn't really matter for Oblivion here because they're winning the fight so handily, and there's even a resurrection. Tap is just playing a little bit more of this flanking Pharah, whereas Beppis has gotten a lot more value out of his flanks himself.
Been staying around his team a little bit more too, it seems like, for Beppis. Not quite flanking as much as Tap has been, and now Tap just in behind, going to try and come back on this flank to really have that, just a crossfire from both of these players on either side. See if it works out, though, for the side of Indignation. You're going to have Slate die immediately after using the ult. Beppis, though, is able to get Sucrax down as well.
Yeah, Beppis has the nano here. Maybe it's enough to turn the tides of this fight, but it's not going to be. Psycho player is going to take him down. That's going to be the fight win for Indignation, finally breaking this defense after 1 minute and 30 seconds. They have some ultimates to work with coming into this next fight. They have nano advantage, which they can put onto Tap and make sure that this barrage gets an insane amount of value, as we're going to get this one last recontest here from Oblivion.
Tap finally making that crossfire and that flank work, and then he almost got the boop off onto Doge, but Doge is able to stay up on it regardless. Psycho player's gonna throw out the Dragon Strike right through where that choke is, where that cart needs to go to get that first cap. Nothing just yet. Tap looking for that opportunity to use that barrage. Coming down, finds himself going into Slay, and then he goes right into the shield, though. Beppis with one of his own, and this is looking like a fight that can go either way.
The nano barrage got completely read by Oblivion, and they're going to be able to defend Labasco. Indignation kind of spaghettiing that engaged just a little bit with the barrage nano combo, and it's Oblivion who comes out on top because of a really good return barrage from Beppis.
Yeah, Beppis is getting a little bit more value just based on him being able to stay alive, too. So Beppis can just stay in the air, and Beppis has already worked almost halfway up to another ult Kenobi.
Yeah, but this is going to be a very scary situation for Indignation here. Fi does have the Blizzard available to him, and this is a ground game win for the side of Oblivion if this Blizzard comes out and gets some value.
Blizzard is something that Pharah loves. Easy direct rockets onto targets to take them down. Waiting for the opportunity to do that. We're already under 1 minute left on this attack. Supercharger out from Indignation and Shade. Shade throwing out as much damage as possible into those shields. They're trying to build up to some ultimates themselves. They only have a little bit of distance left in order to complete this first point, and now they're able to force their way through. They just waited so long for Oblivion to do anything. They never used an ult.
Yeah, Oblivion was so scared about the supercharger damage coming out from Indignation that they turtled themselves around that payload, and then Oblivion decides to play aggressive, completely catches, or rather Indignation plays aggressive, completely catches Oblivion off guard. And like you mentioned, they aren't even able to use any of their ultimates, so now they have him to perhaps stop this point B snowball, but Indignation is looking pretty with their ultimate bank just the same.
A lot of ultimates should be coming up here eventually. Tab getting close to another barrage too, and SFX goes down. Psycho player with that shot. That's going to allow for more space to be given up.
More space and no ultimates used for the side of Indignation. They're going to have close towards a 6-pack, just a 5-pack because Shade doesn't have the supercharger just yet. And they're making this point B push basically for free, Labasco, all the way to this point B.
And A&J dies this time, so now it's the opportunity for Oblivion to come in and do the same thing. They do use the nano boost on to Beppis, but Beppis just going to use it to force players away. Slay will get Tap out of the sky too. Oblivion still manages to stabilize regardless.
Yeah, and really the Mercies dying early in this fights are costing both of these teams equally. You saw that first fight, it was SFX who died. This time it's A&J, and once that Mercy goes down, the enemy team can play a lot more aggressive because you've lost that ability to heal your team, and you've also lost that ability of that get out of jail free card with that resurrection.
So you're pretty much stuck. You don't have the pocket for your Pharah, so your Pharah can't play as aggressive as they would like to. And now we're into a point where there's still a ton of ultimates up for both of these teams. 1:20 left, and now the Gravitic Flux will be the first thing pulled out. Blizzard on the other side, but Beppis with the barrage gets 2 thanks to the Blizzard.
And Slay absorbed so much pressure in that last fight coming from Tap's Pharah. Tap went all the way around to the backside to that choke near point C, and Slay took so much pressure off the rest of his team, even able to sleep Tap and make sure that Tap isn't able to get any value whatsoever with that barrage or with his direct rockets. And now, 50 seconds left, Labasco. Where the card is at right now, this could very easily be last fight territory for Indignation, but they have the ultimates to work with to push this to point B.
That's the one good thing. They didn't really use ultimates in that last fight. The only thing they used was the Gravitic Flux, which forced out a bunch of ults from Oblivion. Dragon Strike will be the first ultimate out, trying splitting players off. No value out of it there. They will next use the Nano Boost onto Tap. Gravitic Flux, though, to counter, and Sucrax is dead, and Beppis falls up onto Tap. This is going disastrous for Indignation.
The Resurrect is there on Sucrex, though, and Alex gets a kill. This is very even, but respawns are in favor of Oblivion.
Oblivion coming back in. They have the Supercharger down for this side of Indignation, though, trying to make some sort of advantage. Sucrax is just going after Slay. Slay
he
sleeps
slept.
Sucrax, and now Sucrax stuck in a bad place, but his team winning behind him is the important part. So even though that sleep happens, Indignation able to push through with the respawners who came back.
The tanks of Alex and Shade, they're coming up super clutch in that last fight, staying alive and doing the damage that they need to win that fight. And it looked very disastrous for Indignation. They very easily could have lost that point right then and right there. Only have 1:15 seconds left, Labasco, to push this into point C, and I think this is going to be close to that last fight territory. No ultimates to speak of because of the switches that they've made. Alex, the closest one. No sound barrier on the other side to deal with it. That's the best case scenario for them.
Fi is close to an ultimate, though, for the defensive side. About to get that Blizzard. Throws it out immediately. Alex tried to eat it, but couldn't do so. That's going to be a fight win for Oblivion just based off of that. Psycho player does manage to keep 1, and the May wall doesn't allow players to really escape, but they are at least able to get out after the wall drops, so they are able to stay up.
Yeah, they have to get out there because it would have been disastrous if anyone would have died in that fight. It would have been more straggle time. And now, 30 seconds left, Labasco. This is absolutely last fight here. They have Gravitic Flux advantage along with the Coalescent. Slay needs to get his very quickly.
Will be able to do so, though. Only 7%, so just a little bit of damage or a little bit of healing.
What a
we'll
wall!
Get that up. Shade gets stuck on the other side of the wall, but able to get around, though, is a good thing for the rest of Indignation. Coalescent dueling. Beppis hit out of the air thanks to a Gravitic Flux, pulling players up and then down. Psychic player following on to SFX, getting close to that Death Blossom himself, killing all of these players that are on the point for Oblivion, but the overtime meter is going to be the rest of the way.
That was a phenomenal Gravitic Flux there from Alex. He knows that the Mercy's going to go for the Resurrection, so he Gravitic Flux where the Resurrection Pharah dead body was, cancels it out so Beppis can't get back into the fight. And now Labasco, last fight here, early barrage from Beppis.
A little too aggressive with Shade, too far away from the rest of the team, so they couldn't keep him up. And now they're down 6v5. Death Blossom out. Will at least get the Immortality field that's come through. Gravitic Flux pulling players high into the sky.
No
They actually missed them, though. Doesn't get anybody. Halt players back in onto the cart, though, to try and finish somebody off, but everybody's staying pretty healthy for this side of Oblivion. And now they have the Coalescence to follow up afterwards, and they've frozen Renee. Renee getting held up, though, thanks to the Immortality field, but Shade threw Alex down as well. Back and forth in this fight they go. Blizzard coming out onto the point. Renee the only one there. Barrage not going to get anything. Indignation so close to finishing this map. Just have to deal with these last few players.
Yeah, Sky player gets the kills they need, and finally Oblivion loses their defense, and Indignation caps with 0 seconds remaining in overtime. A gutsy performance from them, but an even gutsier defense from Oblivion. It looked like there were times, Labasco, in that last round where we saw easily could have been full held at first, could have been full held, could have been second held at second, and they almost got held here as well, but some very clutch plays coming out again from Alex specifically on that Sigma. Really well played Gravitic Flux in that second to last engagement that canceled the Resurrection and got the damage they needed to continuously push.
Indignation, at least completing the map is the most important part, Kenobi, because no matter what, they get themselves another attack. For Oblivion, it's just like the last map. Try and complete with a much better time, which is definitely possible when there was no time on the side for Oblivion.
And even with that, with the way that Oblivion were playing their defense there, even at the point where Indignation capped, if you get this cap, if you're Oblivion, you're going to have most likely a larger time bank than Indignation is going to have. And with the way you play defense, I would be very worried if I were Indignation having to go through that again, because they almost got full health.
It feels like Oblivion is the one dictating how play goes with the compositions that they've been running. The Pharah, obviously, for tap is really good, but Bepis is nothing to really not be unhappy with it. Bepis is a really good Pharah too.
Yeah, and with Indignation specifically, one of the notes I had about them is they're great when they can play at their own tempo, but when they can't set up their plays and they're playing against someone like Oblivion who is really good at dictating the pace themselves, they struggle a little bit and they're not as comfortable as they look when they themselves are playing to their own game plan. So Oblivion is doing a very good job of making sure that Indignation isn't as comfortable as they have been throughout the entirety of this tournament so far.
Spamming down from above his tap onto those players who are pushing this cart for Oblivion. A&J just died! I don't know what happened! They already are down one thanks to that gaff that came through from A&J.
A&J's down. That means the Mercy isn't available to pocket the Pharah, so that means that the Pharah is going to go down here from tap, and this should be Indignation losing this fight. But there's the the res doesn't come out. SFX dies.
And Shade is able to get 2 as a result. Alex following up afterwards, so Indignation turning nothing into something and keeping this cart from moving anywhere. 3 minutes left to go for Oblivion.
And that is completely off the back of Sucrax's Ana right there. He's able to keep his team alive, knowing that the Mercy isn't there, so he has to do all the heavy lifting, and Bepis rather, gets a little bit too aggressive with that Pharah play and eats a Bionade right to the face, isn't able to be healed up, and he goes down, and once the Pharah is down in this composition, you lose a lot of that crossfire potential.
Players going underneath into that building to try and avoid the Pharah rockets from Tap, who's getting close to that rocket barrage. Bep is about even as well, but Tap is making themselves known on this map. Now has the boost to get slapped, and now Bepis has a chance to use Barrage triple kill.
These Anas are playing out of their mind, Labasco. Slay there negates the nano completely from the enemy team of Indignation, and Indignation have made some swaps, desperate swaps, to try and recontest her. Alex has foregone his charge for the Gravitic Flux and is going onto the Hammond.
Makes that switch over to the Hammond. They want to try and contest here. They're not going to be able to do so. The Barrage coming out. I wonder if they're going to make a switch here. They're using the Dragon Strike as well, but they couldn't stop the card is the only thing, Kenobi.
They can't stop the card, and they're just trying to get some stagger picks, but this is still going to be a one fight for Oblivion. Ultimate's coming out to try and stall, but Oblivion has the point already, Labasco.
So all this is a stagger. Like you said, they're taking a little bit of time off the clock. They're not switching their composition either is the craziest part, and A&J actually stalls for a good about 10 seconds there at the end.
That's 10 seconds way too long, Labasco. A&J should have been dead much sooner than that, but the target selection just not quite there yet. Mercy, you know, hitboxes are kind of hard to hit sometimes with that Mercy. I see you, but it is going to be Indignation, or rather it's going to be Oblivion taking this cart through that point B now. They have the ultimate advantage in spades right here. This is very difficult for Indignation to even try and contest against.
How they use their ult advantage is going to be the biggest question. Well, they're not even going to use an ult first. It's going to be the supercharger coming out from Oblivion, or sorry, from Indignation, and Oblivion is able to just kind of kite back, and Bepis gets Psycho Player out. We'll have to use the res here early on in the fight, and now they force their way in, throw the res down, does Oblivion, and pull so many players in. Alex did, or no, it was Renee who used their ult. I just couldn't tell who it was, but regardless, Oblivion just cruising.
Yeah, Oblivion should have this, and they should have this point B capture as well, Labasco. Just some stragglers left on the point, and they won that fight by only using 2 ultimates, and Indignation used their ultimates, almost all of them in that last fight, so this is going to be a very difficult push for them to stop, as Beppis gets a little bit too over-aggressive, big for his britches, but SFX helps his man out, reses him back up, and the Pharmacy's back in the fight. You love to see it, Labasco.
Got the elimination, too, with the punch on the Psycho player, who makes a switch over to
Pistol
the Reaper. They're making a massive swap here for Indignation. They're so behind in ults.
And I don't know really how you come back from this. If you're Indignation, you have to kite out the supercharger. You have to play maybe a little bit over aggressive and catch Oblivion off guard.
Oh, and that's what they do. They're able to get Beppis down in the fight. Anti-nade doesn't matter because Beppis is gone, and now you have the use of the Valkyrie coming through. Renee and Phi bringing this back, though, for Oblivion as they get aggressive themselves into those players that are left alive, but the car is stalled out.
Yeah, they're just brawling the point right now, and the respawns aren't enough for Indignation, and I think it's going to be Oblivion pushing this car a little bit farther. Tap does get Phi, which is a pretty big pick because Phi did have that Blizzard. It's rezzed back up, and unfortunately, at the worst moment, we have a pause.
Pause coming up, and now they're ready again, it looks like, for the side of Oblivion. They called for it very quickly. Pause. It's a very, very quick
Everyone
one.
Just like take a deep breath and just 4, 3, 2, 1. We're back in the game.
In through the nose, out through the mouth, right? But
yeah, you hold it for 3 seconds. That's what
I'm not going to hold it for that long. There's not enough time. Unless you're Oblivion, then there's a lot of time. So they're coming right back through. They're going to throw the supercharger out. Throw the Gravitic Flux in with it as well. Anti-nade onto a ton of the players. Blizzard to freeze them up. And the Coalescence just won't be able to do enough. Oblivion is going to finish with the bigger time bank.
Oblivion here finishing with about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left against the 1 minute of Indignation. They're going to get another minute added on, so it's 3 minutes and 37 seconds for Oblivion. And I would be very scared right now if I'm Indignation. The momentum is completely on the side of Oblivion. They've won the last 2 maps, and now for Indignation, this is really gut check time for them because you have a minute left, and the way that first offense went, a minute didn't get you very much. It barely got you around that first chokehold.
For Oblivion, like you said, so much time on the clock. Defensively, they can do whatever that they want. We've seen them use the Pharah here already defensively. See what they decide to do here. You have to be in such a good position if you're Oblivion, though, because you have this massive time bank. You've taken all of the momentum that Indignation may have had from earlier on and have thrown it back at them. And now they can come out with whatever, and now you have to start playing that guessing game if you're Indignation. This is definitely a game that's going at Oblivion's pace.
I also wonder if Oblivion is going to try and take a close hold here by the spawn doors. With the composition they're bringing out, it doesn't look like they will because Pharah and Mei isn't really the most brawly of compositions that you put in front of a spawn door. Something like Mei Reaper, which has a lot of sustain and a lot of potential to just brawl and stay alive for very long amounts of time. So looks like they're going to be sticking on this Pharah Mei combo, a combo that worked very well for them in that first defense. But Bepp is already down. That's going to be Resurrection not on the table for a little while.
That's a very good start if you're Indignation. You talk about a way to chip at the momentum that's been created for Oblivion. That's one way to do it. Get in an early, easy pick like that. Give yourself some free space as a result to get in a more advantageous position. The anti-nade does come through onto Alex, and Tap is down in the sky. Phi able to snipe him out with those icicles, but Slay is dead. It might be a bigger loss losing that healer than it is to lose your DPS player who's going to be able to come back so fast.
Yeah, Resurrection is available though for SFX, and Jake goes for Psycho player as well, so both of the kills are back, and the spawns are in favor here of Indignation.
So they just got that spawn, that back up, but Psycho player again getting elimination onto the Ana, so you lose all that healing. 4 seconds left. This is going to be an overtime push the rest of the way, but you've created an advantage. Psycho player on this Hanzo going on.
Yeah, then here, Oblivion has to die as quick as possible here. Fi does get 2 cracks. That's a little bit of a nice pick. The respawns, though, are in their favor, and Oblivion will get one last recontest here, but they are a little bit behind in terms of ultimates, and Psycho Player can use this Dragon Strike to ward them off the point completely in this chokehold and maybe get that first point cap.
Psycho Player just about to get that Dragon Strike, has it now, knows where everybody is. We'll see when he decides to use this ultimate, getting a lot of spam coming from Beppis. We'll throw it from the side. We'll force players off of the point, and it gets Renee. You've lost so much utility from that Sigma, and now you have the amplification matrix to make sure you get this point.
And Indignation's going to cap here. This is best case scenario for them, and they're going to roll this through point B. And this is, again, best case scenario, like I said a little bit before, because they were in very much a big danger of losing that first point and not even being able to cap it. Labasco now going into point B, they have ultimates to work with as well. So this could easily, for them, be a 5-point or a 6-point if they play this well enough. Unfortunately, though, for them, Fi is close to Blizzard, and Blizzard, as we know, is a round-winning, fight-winning, game-winning ultimate.
Beppis with that barrage too will have the nano boost potentially, and Psycho Player loses the battle this time to Beppis. That is a massive loss. You got to try and get that res off potentially too if you want to get him back in. Barrage coming through from tap, able to get one down, and now the Blizzard's eaten. Could be huge for Indignation. They still have to win this fight though. Gravitic Flux pulling players into the air. Doge is down. Anti-nade though onto the players left on the card is the only thing. Have to be careful, and they've lost Alex. Coming back in though for the res was A&J and gets him back up. So Indignation, they're going to have some players left alive to keep this back. Psycho Player coming back on the Tracer.
When the world needed him most, Alex comes in the super clutchest as he could. He eats the Blizzard from Fi and then is able to hit a huge Gravitic Flux, and Indignation is moving to point B. They can easily get this cap, Labasco.
No way that they have a chance here to recontest. Maybe if they have the rest of their players come, they're going to maybe try it out. Doge is going to be able to get there, throw the supercharger down almost immediately. They're not able to take it out, and 2 players go down. Alex gets Beppis, but it's looking like it might not be enough, especially with the Gravitic Flux pulling players off. Have to get away from the Blizzard, and Oblivion will stop them right before that second point, but this is still a good attack for only having 1 minute in your time bank for Indignation.
Yeah, and it turns out it wasn't as easy as I thought for Oblivion Labasco, because Indignation had a treasure trove of ultimates that were about to come up online, and they were just too much for Oblivion to deal with, because Oblivion used a lot of their ultimates in that previous fight that they won barely thanks to the heroics of Alex. And again, like you mentioned, 3 minutes and 37 seconds. This is very doable for Oblivion, especially with how they've been playing the map so far, how fast they played that first point, how fast they played the second point as well. They came in to point C with a very hefty time bank, so easily doable for the side of Oblivion.
We have to remember, though, that Indignation tried at the choke to stop Oblivion, and it just failed horribly because they didn't get there in time. They wasted ults, and then were just caught out of position. So that is the one caveat from last time that they maybe will look to change this time on their defense. And they did at least get a little bit of a stop on this first point. So there is potential for them to whittle away at this time bank before they're able to get towards where that golden box of victory is and to get to championship point for Oblivion.
Yeah, I don't want to see Alex switch over to something like the Hammond when he's on Sigma and has the ultimate charge just to try and contest at A. At this point, you can try. At this point, losing A isn't the worst case scenario. You're more worried about that fight at B because that's basically where your last stand has to be. Going to be seeing mirrored comps again. That's a huge stun! Accretion gets the kill, and that's a resable position, though, fortunately for Beppis.
So SFX able to get that res in, but you still have the resurrection advantage for the defending team in Indignation, so a very good start regardless. You obviously are going to give up this early space, but now you're getting into a position where your comp is going to be strongest. They have to try and stay inside the building before they come out, and they want to collapse onto those tanks that are right by where the card is in Shade and Alex. So you have now these players coming around for Oblivion, the wall trying to split them off, the other wall coming up, and now the immortality field to try and keep their players up. Renee gets frozen, and Beppis will go down to Psycho Player. So Psycho Player getting that snipe, but they're losing this battle on the ground is still the only problem, even though they do have the air superiority.
But Psycho Player is freezing the entirety of the enemy team, and Tap comes in with the barrage. Is it going to be enough? It looks like it is. Oblivion is going to be held right here, Labosco, for a little bit longer.
Oh, the anti-nade, nobody there to follow up on it is the only problem. So, very low, but it's not going to matter. Ultimate-wise for Indignation, they have the Blizzard too, so potentially another team fight win.
Yeah, Blizzard really one of the best ultimates in the game right now. Barrage is available for Beppis. Let's see what he can do with it, and it's going to be up to Alex again. Can he put the shield up, or can he put up his kinetic grasp to deal with the damage that's incoming?
You do get hit with the Accretion Rock, though, if you are Beppis, so we'll be at second here before he can come back in. 1:55 left to go. Still a good amount of time for Oblivion to try and complete this map, but they are starting to get into dire straits. Alex getting blocked off by the May wall and dies. Renee to finish him off. Blizzard coming out, though, in response. 2 players pulled in, and now you have the Barrage not getting anything for Beppis. It's too little too late. They tried to res, and it doesn't work. Slade does get tap out of the fight, though, is the only thing. But again, they have so few players for Oblivion, they've got to try and get out.
And now they're segregated away from their enemy team as well. They could get pincered very easily right here if Indignation decides to play aggressively.
Trying to get up to where those players are, and Slay immediately taken down. So the stagger is going to work, but the card is starting to move. You have to get back over there if you are Indignation. They have a ton of ultimates to work with. Graphitic Flux is what they're going to commit in first. Try to keep the stagger going, and then they throw out the amplification matrix too. Maybe not needed, but it's okay because they won the fight, and now you're under a minute for Oblivion.
Indignation is playing this defense so well, Labosco. Every time Beppis is up in the air, they're using Halt Accretion to make sure that he's stunned and not getting the consistent Pharah damage value that you would normally see on a map like this. Unfortunately for Indignation, they're going to be going up against a Blizzard from Fi, as we've seen from Fi in previous series and games. His Blizzards are usually on point, and this could be the momentum that Oblivion needs to take this first point.
Such a pivotal map. Championship point for whatever team ends up winning it. Alex with the Accretion Rockets SFX. Fi is able to get Sucrax down in response, so support down on either side. Tap coming through with the Barrage, gets 2 but dies the Beppis. The res comes through on his
the Blizzard,
but right into a Blizzard. 2 players on. They're frozen in, trying to stay alive, using the Fortify, but the Barrage from Beppis will allow them to advance on.
And in overtime, it looks like finally Oblivion is going to be able to take this first point. I don't know if Indignation will try and get one last recontest here. They have a little bit of time. It's cutting close, but they're not going to do it. They're going to say, we will lose in the point B push instead of trying to die at point A and giving up a lot of ultimate economy, especially because if Oblivion gets off the point even a little bit now, Labosco, they're going to lose. This is an overtime push.
They can take this fight on the bridge where you have the potential to take players off. Gravitic Flux pulling players into the air. Oblivion staying alive for the moment, but tap will fall. So Indignation losing one here. Oblivion trying to keep this going. They hold one off, and Alex Blizzard is out, though.
It's huge.
Blizzard coming through. So many players frozen, but they got to kill them. And Nade comes through. Indignation clears the card. Indignation now to championship points.
Indignation puts on one of the best defenses I've ever seen on Rialto. They're negating completely the enemy Pharah and letting Tap do Tap things like we've known him to do. And like you mentioned, Indignation is going to be on match point here at the very end. What a series we've had so far, Labosco.
Amazing escort map that we had from both of these teams. It was so close either side. Just not such a good hold by Indignation on that first point, that once they got to second point, overtime had already gone, and now we're at this point where they have the chance to win it all.
And like we talked about a little bit earlier in the matchup, which team was going to be the one who is going to start innovating and changing around their composition and how they're playing, and Indignation has adapted. They adapted for sure in that last map. We saw at the start where it was just Beppis and Fi getting an insane amount of value on that farm, and not Pharah and that May. But then on their last defense, Indignation changes it up a little bit. They decide that we're going to spend a little bit more time with our accretions going after the Pharah instead of going after the May on the ground. We're going to make sure the Pharah isn't getting the amount of value, which means that Tap on our side is going to be able to play pretty much uncontested on that Pharah himself.
It's going to be some decisions to be made for Oblivion on where they want to go for that next map. We've obviously run the gamut of map types, Kenobi, so we're coming right back around to what is going to be a control point map. Of course, we have to see where we're going to go, but Control, we know last time, did go in favor of Indignation, but it was so close. This is where Oblivion has struggled the most. Their choice is going to be Oasis, Kenobi. Potential for Pharah on this map, very high.
And I believe that Oblivion has not won a control round against Indignation in the series that we casted them so far. So for Oblivion, this is really do or die for them, because if you take this, you go to a neutral point in the map 7, you're able to banish one of your demons, which has been control against Indignation so far. And like you mentioned, the way that they played it at the start, I think they very easily have a chance, especially on Oasis. I'm worried about the fact that it's Oasis because the way that Indignation adapted against the Pharah coming out from Oblivion, if that is something that we're going to be seeing, especially on some of those maps that Oasis brings, I would be a little bit worried for them.
There is going to be just a second here before we jump into that Oasis map, but just looking at it, like you said, they have adapted very well. Tap has really kind of matched whatever Beppis has done on the Pharah is one thing I think that we can point out. And then I think the battle, though, on the low ground is where things sort of seem to go in favor of Indignation. Psycho Player, I mean, whether it's Hanzo or even the May, has been able to snipe Beppis out of the air sometimes, and that has given some advantages over to Indignation.
And I don't even think it's only that. I think the tank line for Indignation,
yes,
a lot of the time has been playing a lot better than the tank line for Oblivion. It seems like when Oblivion was winning a lot of those matchups, it's because the May from Beppis has been so good. But Indignation's tank line, Shade and Alex have been playing phenomenally so far this series. Alex in particular, even when they're losing, Alex's Sigma looks incredible. And I'm really impressed with how he's using his gravitic fluxes, how he's saving his kinetic grasp for things like the Reaper going into the backline, or just saving it for Death Blossom in particular, or even just eating something like a May ultimate. He's been one of the key factors, I think, for Indignation, and he's been maybe not showing up in the kill feed as much, even though we had the first control map where he basically saved the game by himself. He's been the star player, I would say, for Indignation.
Well, you think about it, that really is a big save, because otherwise, right now, it would be 3-2.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is a massive save that you have happen, where Indignation would be the team behind technically right now. Who knows how things would have been if that were the case. So everyone just about to get ready. We're going to enter into our next map. It's championship point for Indignation here on Oasis and Kenobi. The first map we go to is going to be Gardens.
Oh, and this is a Pharah map, Labosco, and now I'm a little bit worried about what Oblivion is going to do here and what Indignation is going to do. I expect Indignation, if they see the Pharah, to play the same way that they were playing on Rialto, focused Beppis out of the air on that Pharah, and make sure that Tap is able to just play a little bit more fast and loose, because he doesn't have to worry about another Pharah taking him on in the 1v1. And on the other side, maybe we see Oblivion split it up. Maybe Beppis is the one who's going to go back to the May and they put Phi on the Pharah or something like that. That would be something I would like to see, because Beppis seems to have just a better understanding of how to play the May. It's why they won Volskaya. Let's just be real about it, Labosco. They won Volskaya because Beppis was playing May, and I would like to see May again from him.
Beppis is going to show us McCree here early on, almost expecting maybe the tap on the Pharah, but they're now going to switch over to the Reaper Doomfist, so they're going to go back with what they played the last time we were on a control point map, the Reaper Doomfist comp, with everything else that we've seen around in the Moira and the Lucio and the Sigma and the Orisa.
Yeah, I don't want to say just yet what these teams are going to be bringing to the table, because we would obviously cast or curse it, but it looks like for Indignation, they're going to be bringing out this composition of the Pharah and the McCree. So the McCree is, I believe, a read that they think that Oblivion is going to be playing that Pharah in the sky, so they would have something to deal with it, but they're not going to have that. So Skya player has to play really safe here, because he's very susceptible to a dive into the backline if he doesn't have that flashbang on lock.
And that's something that you can do with no problem if you're Oblivion. You can all dive together, but Phi dies so early on to the rockets from Tap. Tap Barrage already! He wins the fight, no problem for Indignation!
Tap dismantles the entirety of Oblivion. That might be one of the fastest barrages I've ever seen from someone, and Indignation takes control of the point. Holy cow, Labosco, what was that barrage timing?
I don't even know. I feel like we weren't even in the map for 30 seconds. That's absolutely ridiculous that Tap's able to build it that fast. They took too long to do anything for Oblivion. They're coming back onto the point now, streaming their way in. They have the coalescence that they're going to throw out almost immediately. Bepis goes down early on in the fight, though. Can't even deal with Tap in the air, who's trying to build up to that next barrage, but they do even it up, taking Psycho player out. 5v5 now, and Doge giving the advantage over to Oblivion. They throw out the amplification matrix here, but this seems like a bad decision. Indignation losing this fight, even though they get the res.
Yeah, the res is back up, but Doge is showing up in the kill feed a ton right here, and I think it's going to be Oblivion finally taking control of this point, even though they got it to 50% for Indignation. Not the worst haul at all coming out from them, especially with the ultimates that they're going to be having coming into this next fight. They are going to have that Gravitic Flux available to them along with the Supercharger. The biggest thing for Oblivion, though, is SFX needs to get this sound barrier in time. I believe he will be able to because it's only 12%.
Psycho player was showing Reaper, now switches over to Mei. So they're going to have a Mei now. They had a Tracer there for a second.
We have the Mei here. Mei is a little bit more brawly and can section off the McCree with those walls, make Bepis a little bit more uncomfortable here, but they're just slow pushing into this point, waiting for Tap to do some damage, but it's Bepis who does the damage instead.
Yes, switching over to that McCree, paying dividends to try and deal with that Pharah in the sky. They have to try and use the res, but they haven't used it yet. Bepis goes down. Coalescence keeping players up for this side of Oblivion, but Shade is able to get 2 down, so Indignation still an opportunity. Fi's Death Blossom not finding enough as he goes down to Sucrux, and Indignation should be able to stream back in and take this point.
Bepis gets way too big for his britches there on that McCree, goes way too aggro into the team fight, gets blown up, and Indignation wins that fight using no ultimates there. Tap gets a little bit over aggressive with that barrage, but it doesn't matter. They still have ultimate advantage coming into this next fight.
56% was built up for Oblivion, 63% on this first control point in the first to 2 that we have on this map of Oasis. 3 ultimates up on one side for Indignation, 2 up right now, at least for the moment, for Oblivion as they come right back onto the point. Walled off, though, is Renee, trying to stay alive, eating up as much as possible with the kinetic grasp of the Coalescence and Shade. Too much on Indignation, and they force back Oblivion, and they build up to 90%.
Oblivion has to run back to their spawn. They can't let any more stragglers die. Bepis is down. That's a huge pick, and it looks like they aren't going to be able to get one last recontest as a team, Labasco. This is disastrous for Oblivion.
SFX is going to be able to, from behind, get the touch onto the point, but the Blizzard is out to stop players who are trying to stream back. Overtime meter starts to go. Gravitic Flux pulling players into the air. They can't get on the point. 1-0 lead for Indignation. They are now at map points and championship points.
Can we talk about Tap's barrage? I don't know how long. It took like 10, 15 seconds. I wasn't even looking at his percentile because I didn't even think it was possible for someone to get a barrage that quickly, but Tap pulls it out, and it seemed like once they got that first pick, it kind of just blew the momentum of Oblivion out of the water. And like you mentioned, map point here for Indignation, they're switching back to their standard composition. The composition, Labasco, that has brought them this far already. What a fitting way it would be for them to win this EU Open Practice Division with the composition that they've kind of mastered.
To force it to go to another map, if you're able to win this for Oblivion, it's to show that you've been able to learn and play on the same level with Indignation in this composition. Bepis immediately going in with the rocket punch, does get a lot of damage, no kills coming from it though. Finding himself Alex there, halting players back in his Doge, and now they fall down into the halt, into the ground. So now they've got to try and work their way back up, and that exposure of both of their tanks gone allows for Fi to fall, and Indignation will be able to take this point first. Players are starting to come back though to stall out, at least for the moment, for Indignation, but Tap too much, and now gives the advantage right back over to Indignation.
Yeah, it was a huge halt from Shade at the start. Bepis does get the kill on the Tap, but dueling Coalescences are going to make this fight last a little longer.
Renee able to get taken down though too, so now Oblivion is the team that's looking like they may have themselves an opportunity because Fi is back into this, and it's going to be Oblivion taking the point first.
Oblivion somehow, someway win a fight that feels like it lasted for forever, Labasco. Oblivion takes control of the point. They have the percentage now ticking up for them. They're going to have the advantage in this next fight. They have a Meteor Strike to work with. The only issue is that Indignation, Alex got a lot of damage done in that last fight, much more than Renee, so he's going to be way ahead in terms of ultimate charge. And ANJ has this sound barrier available to him way before Renee has his Gravitic Flux.
Right back in goes Beppis, going back towards his team to make sure he heals up. Now comes through with the Meteor Strike, looking for an opportunity to drop on. Just going to stay safe with it instead. And now we'll wait for the players to come back in Indignation. 34% built up for Oblivion. They have to win this map to keep things going. Supercharger coming out. Coalescence quickly taking it out. Gravitic Flux, though, pulling players into the air. The Coalescence keeping them alive for the moment, though. Still have to follow up afterwards. Players going down on either side. 5v5.
The sound barrier is coming out as well. Renee's about to get his sound barrier, his Gravitic Flux as well.
Vi is going to have himself his Death Blossom. Nothing coming through for Psycho Player on his Meteor Strike again from Beppis. That's his second one in this fight. And Oblivion staying in front and already almost up to 70%.
Oblivion are scrapping all the way through these fights, but they still have percentage on the point. They're still ticking upwards, so even though these fights are so close, Oblivion takes the lead every time they trade. And now Labasco, 75% for Oblivion. This might be last fight for Indignation. They have no ultimates to work with. This is a disaster for them.
Vi was the last player to die, too. He's able to come back in, so he's still going to be into this fight, so it's going to stay 6v6 regardless. Only a few ultimates up on the board, and they're on the side of the team on the point next. Oblivion, Gravitic Flux, halt players in. Massive one coming through, and there's no sound barrier. Renee falling up onto A&J afterwards, so no chance of using that. Death Blossom out from Vi. Doesn't get a lot of damage through, but does force out some ultimates. Coalescence coming through on either side.
There's the flanking Sigma. He gets an Accretion Rock. Meteor Strike coming from Beppis. The halt! It's huge! They get the 3K, and that's going to be Oblivion taking this map, Labasco.
Only a few players coming back in for Indignation to try and keep this going. Meteor Strike towards Renee, but Renee able to handle tap with no issue. A&J, the only player left, and we're going to a third point here on Oasis. Oblivion needs to win this map to keep it going. We're going, though, to a map where Pharah can be played, and we saw for Indignation, that is a boon.
I mean, Tap got a barrage in 24 seconds, Labasco. If he can recreate that same kind of success on Pharah here, that is what is going to win Indignation this round. You see the swaps already. The gloves are off for them. Tap going back onto his trusty Pharah, and Oblivion gut check time again for them. You lose this round, you are out of the tournament, and you get second place. If you win, you earn yourself that 7th game. Clean slate for both teams, just one more map.
Beppis is showing us Doomfist here at the beginning. I wonder if they're going to expect the Pharah or not. Vi is going to play the Symmetra to send them out quickly with the teleport, but what does Vi switch to? It's the Reaper.
Vi's going to go to the Reapers, so Oblivion sticking to their guns with this composition that works so well on that last map. Tap already at 23% towards that barrage, 30%. He's getting a lot of value done already.
They have to collapse quickly onto this team. Don't allow him to build up anymore, and that's exactly what they're trying to do for Oblivion. SFX, though, is going to go down instead. They're going to lose one player, and Slay is dead as well. Both the supports, this is a lost fight for Oblivion, but Doge is able to get Psycho Player beforehand. The rest coming back, though, to keep them strong at 6 for Indignation. The flip will come on for Oblivion is the only thing. So even though they've lost this fight, they're building up some percentage, and it just what is ending up to be a crazy fight.
That is the best case scenario for Oblivion, that they got that cap because they're able to stop the cap percentage from Indignation. Just some stragglers left, and Indignation will win the fight. But a lot of ultimates are about to be online for Indignation soon, and it's going to be very difficult for Oblivion to try and come back and contest this point. Barrage from Tap. Renee has to read this and has to play masterfully around it with this shield and with this kinetic grasp. If you let Tap get another barrage like he did in that first map in Gardens, this might be the point where Indignation takes control of the game and never lets go.
Tap looking for that opportunity too, but they spot it out. They're going to go to the high ground, so that'll make things a little bit more difficult for Tap. Renee kind of staying up there for a second, looking for when Tap is going to come through with that barrage. They know that Tap has to have it, but Vi is dead at the beginning of the fight. The barrage is out, and it's a triple kill from Tap.
Tap is able to get the kills, and Tap, again, with that 3K barrage, I talked about it, how it had to be Rene there, available to block the damage, but he isn't in position, and a very scary situation now for Oblivion. Swaps over to some different here. Moira coming back in, doesn't have the coalescence available to them, and their ultimate charge is extremely weak, Labasco, for Oblivion. They have not gotten a lot of damage done.
Less than 50% away from Indignation from winning this championship game in this practice open division season. Oblivion not giving up though, rotating onto the point. Supercharger coming out from Shade, trying to avoid the damage as much as possible. Is Oblivion only Renee getting pulled up, and another, and two die. Thanks to it, the High Noon will get one as well. The Deadeye getting this one, and it's Indignation one fight away from winning this championship.
And Oblivion still have no ults. They haven't charged very quickly. Renee, only 67% towards that gravitic flux there. Doge is going to be the one who has to be the hero here with this supercharger. They have the coalescence to combo with it as well. It might be too much damage for Indignation to handle. That has to be their win condition here, or a halt meteor strike from Beppis.
They're coming right back in immediately, but Tap with the barrage. Fi is down again early on in the fight. Coalescence committed in. They have to win here. Coalescence has to be big. Two players go down. Blythe with another one, and they're going to be able to get this flip. Oblivion is staying alive.
Oblivion still alive. Just some stragglers that they have to kill. They need to get rid of Tap. They luckily flip the point, so if they get some straggler kills here, that's best case scenario for them. Tap and ANJ have to retreat here on this pharmacy combo. It's going to be Oblivion at the death, taking back the point. And luckily for them, Labasco, they have some ultimates to work with. They have the Gravitic Flux, which should be a fight win because there's no defensive ultimate on the other side for Indignation.
Still can't lose any fights, though. At that overtime is where it's at if the flip comes through for Indignation. Oblivion, though, getting so aggressive. They're trying to get away, but Alex, two players are going to get caught out, and now they get the flip, just the pharmacy comp. Nobody's going to be able to get back. Indignation is going to be your champions, taking down Oblivion.
Oblivion go for an all-or-nothing push onto Indignation, but Indignation is ready, and it's, again, the tank line who stands strong. Shade and Alex pull off a masterful kite and defense away from the six-man death ball that was running at them. They get the kills, and then it's the pharmacy that gets the back cap, and after that, it's just done and dusted. Labasco, Indignation, your EU OD practice season champions.
Very fitting, too, that the play of the game is the super quick 20 seconds or whatever it was that Tap was able to build that barrage. That ended up being the play of the game. And congratulations to Indignation taking down Oblivion. It was a super hard-fought match the entire way, too, Kenobi. My goodness, though. That's how you want to see your championship go. It was not easy. The score goes 4-2, but that's not indicative of how close this was.
I mean, we were at a point where it very easily could have gone to that seventh map we were talking about at the start. Even from the first control, we could have seen, with how close it was, we could have seen this gone 7 games. And it feels like we've gone 7 games, Labasco, between both of these teams. And I'm just really thrilled that this was the final that we got. Both of these teams put on an absolute show. We'll be seeing them again in the ODs that are to come. All of these players you should definitely know about going into those seasons as well. They all played phenomenal.
These are two top teams as far as the European division is concerned that we're going to be looking for to continue pushing on. These are teams that have players in every position that is really, really good. So again, congratulations for both teams to get to this point, but Indignation, our champion, the #1 seed, going all the way through the bracket and being able to win in the end. You can't say enough about what they've been able to do.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Oblivion, third time was not the charm, but they put up a hell of a fight, Labasco, at the end there. It looked much closer than their series previous in the winner's semis. This looked like there was a possibility where Oblivion could have taken a few of these maps and even taken the series. And I'm very thrilled and happy for them that they put up that much of a fight and that we got this really good grand final.
We did get such an incredible grand final, but we're not done today. Kenobi and I are. Europe is done, but we have North American Open Division practice season coming up. That's going to have some wild games too. So I would just stick around if I were you. Yeah. That's what I'm going to do.
Don't touch the browser. Just leave it open.
Exactly. Leave it open. We have some incredible games coming up for that. But for the European Open Division, that's it for us. Congratulations again to Indignation. Congrats to everybody else who makes this possible. Thank you to everybody behind the scenes here making us do this, the Broadcast GG crew who all make this possible. Thanks to Ben, who's been our producer here today as well for these last couple of games. But again, thank you to everybody else. And thank you for sticking around and watching this throughout the entire way. We'll see you next time.